Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for participating today to our webinar. Let's get digital and D2C, how CPG brands are becoming digital first to enable their direct-to-consumer transformation, and how you can too. So I am Abigail Schirmann. I am VP Retail and CPG at BayBridgeDigital. So BayBridgeDigital is a global consulting company partnering with Salesforce and all of Salesforce digital transformation across e-commerce, across CRM, marketing, and other solutions. We are headquartered in Israel and in France. And I'm very pleased today to host a number of special guests. I suggest we let them introduce themselves briefly before we start our webinar, starting with Olivier.
Hi everyone, Olivier. So I lead the business of Salesforce in Israel. Been with Salesforce for the past 9 years, and for the past 4 years in Israel. So hi everyone.
Ronit.
Hi, nice meeting you. I'm Ronit. I'm doing commerce in Israel, both for B2C and B2B. I've been with the company for complete 5 quarters, and it's a crazy change quarter by quarter.
Yael, it's your turn.
Okay, I was waiting for you to call my name. Okay, so hi, I'm Yael. I'm the head of Video Digital. 15 years of experience in the digital landscape, especially in e-commerce, data marketing, and customer experience. I worked in companies like Kimberly-Clark, Microsoft, and I love cracking the challenge of consumer relationships with CPGs companies. I think it is a great challenge that needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's the reason for today's webinar. We'll have Elise Ducret, CMO of L'Oréal, joining us in a few minutes, and just that's the reason why the webinar today is in English, as we have a special guest from Europe. Throughout the webinar, don't hesitate to write us your questions via the chat, and we'll try to answer either at the end of the session, or after that. So before we start, I'd like to give us some context of why today this is such an important topic. The trend really of D2C is not a new trend. We have really seen in the past few years a tremendous amount of investment going into the D2C space. Over 3 billion were invested in CPG companies in D2C type initiatives. And today, if we look at the US, we see that the revenues generated last year were above $14 billion. The real driver of that change is that CPG manufacturers are both trying to sort of overcome the challenges of smaller and margin pressure coming from retailers. They have also a real desire to connect and to engage with consumers, and that's also what consumers want, as now over 50% of consumers want to shop and find information directly on the manufacturers' sites. And because the real data is really the power today and what makes a difference between industry players, data being both strong insights into product development, into consumer engagement, into media optimization, into the overall sales cycle. CPG manufacturers have had different types of strategies really getting into the DTC space. On the one hand, organic change. We see companies, if we take Unilever, for example, that came up with new subscription models around some of their products in the hygiene product, in the feminine hygiene space. With 7th generation, they come up with a monthly or bi-monthly subscription, and they encourage consumers to take a quiz to better anticipate the product combination and mix that they can send us. The organic type of initiatives, but also acquisition. Also to say on Unilever, Unilever made a huge acquisition in the D2C space when they acquired the Dollar Shave Club, the new sort of razor subscription model in the US. And today, if we move to the next page, we see that the range of D2C strategy is very wide. starting of course with presence on social media, which is really the sort of now become very common. Everyone has a presence on social media, all the way down to sort of the creation of pure players, DTC brands, such as Casper in the US that was very successful on mattresses, or the Birchbox, which came up in the beauty space. So the range is very wide, and the number of manufacturers today that are expected to sell directly is more than 40%. And that's a real trend that is becoming more than only, I would say, a trend, but a real necessity, especially when we see what has been happening in the last few months with the corona outbreak. What we've really seen is that the strength of your digital infrastructure is what will really make the difference between a strong and a medium player as a D2C player. If we move to the next page, what we see here is that there are a number of factors that have highlighted through the corona outbreak the urgency to transform. The first one, of course, is the fact that there was sort of a natural shift from offline to online due to the availability and the number of stores that were open. And that shift really created pressure on the digital infrastructure of CPG websites and retailer websites, generally speaking. The number of orders, the number of delivery slots, the ability to stretch your supply. And we've seen that the grocery space, which was quite small and in its share of online sales, has benefited from a huge increase, moving from less than 4 or 5% to 14%. And that's not only true for grocery, but for a number of products in stationary equipment, yoga mattresses, a number of different categories have benefited from that. And I think there is a strong belief that going forward, this is going to really change the way consumers shop. We hear a lot the term the new normal. It's difficult now to really predict how things are going to change now that the lockdown starts to change in every country. But we do anticipate and we do hear from consumers today that they want to continue to have a good experience online and to continue to shop online. There is almost a sort of fear through the last surveys of consumers to go back into stores. And the third, I think, important element to keep in mind is the fact that customer engagement is a major differentiator. All the brands pretty much have really come up with new ways to communicate with their customers during the time that they weren't able to communicate through actual point of sales. We've seen them communicate on social media. We've seen them engage in switching the purpose of their factories to build masks. We've seen a number of customer engagement initiatives. But what I think was very interesting is initiatives that helped companies generate sales and generate loyalty. And examples in China are very meaningful. In Wuhan, there was a cosmetic company, of course, where all the stores were closed, a local company that leveraged WeChat and asked the beauty advisors to really communicate and engage with their customers through WeChat, and was able to generate a 200% increase of online sales versus the year before. Again, in China, we've seen the growth of live commerce and companies that are non-Chinese and global companies like Unilever, like Louis Vuitton, leverage those new initiatives, those new platforms to generate engagement and sales. So really today, all that background and all that change has really led us to organize that webinar and get here the perspective of experts on the D2C play to really share their thoughts on how we can address digital transformation going forward. So I will start the questions now. I'm going to starting with Olivier. So hello, Olivier. Thanks for being with us. I think really the first question, you as a sort of head of Salesforce Israel, would love to hear your perspective. Looking at your Salesforce customers in the retail and CPG space, how have they really handled the lockdown and the post-lockdown, since today is the first day that all the malls and all the stores are completely reopening?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, I think there's a few ways to look at this. We have actually analyzed, kind of three phases. The first one, I think, where we would kind of start to lock down the country was actually what's so-called a stabilize, phases where we were kind of, I would say most of the retailers were kind of being directly impacted by the surge in online commerce and obviously in supply chain disruption. I think that was actually pretty much the first phase, and it actually took some of them to kind of look at how they could actually digitally engage in a better way with their customers. So we have actually helped a couple of retailers and CPG companies to do like better digital engagement, since people were like locked down and call centers were not actually effectively responding to customer calls and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, that was, I would say, one of the first trends that we have seen. The other piece, which actually more for our CPG companies, obviously our CPG company, regardless if they are in the food, beverage, kind of industries, everyone has been impacted, by COVID. So, and I would say the other trend that we have seen, and that's the purpose as well of this webinar, is we've seen as well that retailers are now kind of being competition, as you mentioned, actually to the CPG company themselves. So we see actually big retailers, and I won't mention their names in Israel, but we see like retailers in Israel like leveraging their supply chain and delivery capabilities across the country to kind of deliver directly, to the shops, and they're kind of becoming really like a big competition to the CPG food companies, and therefore driving our CPG companies to think of how they can now disrupt and go into the fight mode in order to kind of stabilize their market share as well. With their own customers. The second thing, which is now the post-lockdown, and I would say the post-lockdown, so we call it, going back at Salesforce. So as you said, we're now opening up today back. Okay, so I would say that the shops, obviously the supermarkets were pretty much open, during COVID. I don't think that there was actually a lot of traffic physically into the store, but rather a lot of traffic online. We have seen, to be honest, most of the online platform crashing. I'm not gonna, I don't know who's actually connected, but for sure, some of the retailers know what I'm talking about. Most of the biggest, supermarket chains, I've seen their online platform crashing due to the volume of requests they have actually handled. And to be honest, we've been already having a lot of discussion with many of them to see how we can actually better support them in the post, COVID mode, in order to really provide them with the right platform to scale from a Commerce Cloud perspective. But Ronit will touch base on this better than I. And I think the other piece is now, how do we actually help the shops reopen regardless? Okay, so aside from that retail perspective, we have actually a digital strategy. We have just released a suite of product called work.com. And basically what we want to do, we're going to touch this a little bit, I think, on our partnership, Abigail, is, how do we help people like, do mobile queuing? How do we make sure that, you can still open your store, that you can still keep your social distancing with your customers, that that 2 meters regulation, which is super hard to keep, and how do you make sure that you can still drive, like I would say, like a safe traffic to your store and still do business in a safe way. So that's the other big trend that we see now from a retail perspective, and on which we're actually partnering with you, with BayBridge, and obviously all the partners, and that's actually the big trend. So now with respect to answering who's been doing what, better or worse, I want to add something here to the discussion. Is regardless of business, there's as well like a behavior that shifts an attitude, and I think we have seen a lot of brands during the crisis that have done a lot to kind of do something, for the country, for the citizens, and we have seen a lot of CPG brands do a lot of things to show their their gratitude, their empathy, to the people. Those brands are going to come out stronger for sure from the crisis, and they will get a lot of credit for this. Some others have done a lot. They have not even like lower their prices on primary goods, and I can tell you that these ones, with respect to that, they have not even delivered like a good customer service, will for sure be like the loser of the post-COVID. And I think we're going to see kind of a surveys of people like really like losing big market share and traffic into their stores because they were simply not there, to help customers and to help the citizens. So that was my 50 cents, I would say, to what's happening in retail post-COVID.
I think that giving is the new black.
True. Completely agree, Yael.
Yeah.
I do think that commerce is becoming a platform for a continuance business of relationship with your customer. It doesn't have to be yet about buying or selling, but if you want to have business continuity, this is part of the conversation you have to have on a new way to communicate with your direct consumer, even if you're not selling him yet.
Yeah, I think that there was a real appreciation, I think, and a real need during that period to avoid doing too much commercial marketing, but find sort of creative ways to stay connected. And I think that leads me to my second, to our second guest, Elise, Elise Ducret from Yael, who just joined us. Elise, thank you so much for being with us today. We're very pleased to.
Thank you for the invitation. Sorry, I'm late.
I think that
Abigail, do you hear me as well?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Okay.
Everything well. I think the benefit for the audience really of having someone like Elise join us today is really having the perspective of a global major player and how they are dealing with issues around digital transformation and what we can learn from L'Oréal here in the local market. So thank you for being with us. Elise, we have really 3 questions that we'd like your perspective on. I think L'Oréal is mainly a manufacturer, but also is also a retailer for a number of their brands. Can you share with us how both activities have been impacted in the last few months by the context?
Okay, just before answering this question, I wanted to add something about what has been said just previously. I think the brand that will remain after the COVID would be the brand that have proved their utility to consumers. And we've seen that on all our brands at L'Oréal. And I think it's changed the way we see the brands tomorrow. And I think this is quite interesting because it's worse for brands, but this is also the case for, let's say, GAFA, like Facebook and Amazon. They have proven their utility during this context, and I think their perception with our consumers will change. So this was just to say something about what you've said previously. And regarding your question, what I can say is that L'Oréal is a beauty company with a footprint of distribution which is very large and a portfolio of brands which is very diverse. We have more than 36 brands worldwide and more than 56 in France, so it's quite a lot. So the impact is very different depending on the channel, depending on the region, of course, and the category of products. So in terms of region, the way the coronavirus has impacted markets is consistent. It's the same everywhere. We see some encouraging signs of rebound in China right now, and with the reopening of stores and consumers that are coming back to the stores carefully, yes, but they are coming back, and this is a signs of that are very positive for us. But despite that, e-commerce in China has remained very dynamic. And what we have seen in whole markets is that during this crisis, the weight of e-commerce has really accelerated a lot. We were very in a different situation in France because it was very low in terms of traffic, in terms of business. But we have seen during this crisis that there was that was the only channels, maybe with some supermarkets and some pharmacies that maintain a huge traffic and a source of business for L'Oréal. So you know that we have hairdressing industry. So for this kind of industry, of course, the COVID has impacted a lot because all the salons are closed. But we are still selling professional products online. The luxury perfumery stores are also closed, so it's very tough for this channel. And what I said previously is that pharmacies still have traffic because people are going to pharmacies, of course, for health reasons, to buy creams to repair their hands and a lot of washing products. And hypermarkets and supermarkets benefiting also from people going shopping. So to summarize, e-commerce and pharmacies are booming. Supermarkets are doing okay, while travel retail, hair salons, and perfumeries are struggling a lot.
Yeah.
So the impact on L'Oréal is different from from the different channels I've just exposed before. In terms of categories, it's the same. The categories that are the most impacted are fragrances, of course, and makeup. When you stay at home, you wear less makeup, of course. And when we will come back, we will have some masks. So it means that there will be a shift from your mask to your eyes. So we are working on it. We are laughing, but it's the situation actually. Skincare is resisting, but it's not the same in all countries. In Asia, it's doing very well, because I think there are a lot of routines also in Asia with the use of masks, etc. So it's still doing well. In Europe and in US, it's much more the face cleansing, which is resisting. And obviously, we have all the Indian products in France with all the shampoos and shower gels. So they are doing very well. But the most dynamic category is, guess what? Home hair color, of course. All the salons are closed, so everyone is doing hair color at home. And I suggest you to look to connect to Facebook and see the video with Eva Longoria. She's made a tutorial in order to explain how you can do your hair color at home. So
DIY.
Yeah. So, sorry.
I've tried that. Didn't work on me, Elise. I tried on me. It didn't work. I need to learn again on the tutorial.
Yeah. You can have a look and you will see. So this is the situation today. We cannot predict what is going to happen after. We know that there will be some consumer mindset shifts and some acceleration in trends. For example, the quest for safe products and the products that work. And I think it will be the comeback of trust in science. So we need to reassure consumers, and this will be the main message. And brands with the long-term trust of their consumer will have an advantage. So beauty has always been a very dynamic category. So we are confident in the future, but we cannot predict the after.
Okay. You touched, Elise, on on e-commerce and how you've seen very good results in e-commerce, as L'Oréal has invested a lot in DTC around e-commerce. Could you share with us some of the highlights of your strategy around direct-to-consumer at L'Oréal?
Yeah. So in 2018, e-commerce for L'Oréal was around 16% of sales and grew by 52%. And its share will probably be higher the next years. We target 30% at group level. So we know that in China, it's already 30%, just for you to know. And L'Oréal had taken the digital bet a long time ago and was ahead in that area in terms of consumer activation, media targeting, influencers, and e-commerce too. The best example to share for me is the acceleration in China in the past 5 years. L'Oréal has really been a pioneer by deciding to accelerate online by first adapting the organization and shifting resources ahead of the curve. So it means having the right expertise for managing and creating the content, boosting the media, boosting the traffic, but also for creating e-merchandising, pushing promotion, and developing also the advices through e-beauty advisors and all the tools around for enabling engagement and instant conversion by focusing on consumer knowledge. And on the other pack, there is the back office part, being able to deliver everywhere in one day, in 1 hour, with huge capabilities on supply for managing demand planning, order processing, replenishment. And this was quite a challenge in China with such a big country. And during this COVID crisis, despite the decrease of all channels, e-commerce reinforced its increase. And if we compare with France, the situation is very different. the delays for deliverings in China during the crisis remain the same as before, between 2 hours to 1 day maximum. Whereas in France, the delays vary from 1 week to 3 weeks. So if I can summarize, I think there are two key elements. Is that first one, L'Oréal China has developed a consumer-centric, data-driven real-time model, very performing around the consumer knowledge, meaning that every minute they can modify something and adapt their communication, their content, their media around this consumer knowledge. And the second element is their supply chain performance. And I think it explains the reason of their acceleration, which is massive in China. Another element I can also tell you is that, of course, L'Oréal has benefited from the acceleration in mobile, in the usage of mobile. It's key. The way that you can do everything with your mobile and buy products everywhere also was a contributor of this acceleration.
Okay. If you now look at Israel, outside, we are here to talk about Israel and what type of advice sort of a global player like L'Oréal and from your experience can give to CPG companies to accelerate their D2C strategy. What would be your advice?
To be honest, I think I will reuse, and I actually doing the same in France, trying to reuse and adapt the Chinese model. So around 4 key topics for me, which is first one, consumer knowledge. Second one, activation. Third one, consumer engagement. And when I joined the meeting, you were talking about that, Abigail. And fourth one, which is organization. So regarding consumer knowledge, the idea is to be really consumer-centric first. And it's not the model for L'Oréal. We are product-centric first. So it's really a change of mind. So being consumer-centric first, meaning by collecting insight from all touch points, analyzing and categorizing these insights in order to have a clear knowledge of consumers' habits and usage, and understand how we can reach them, convert them, and retain them. So, and that's why the data-driven real-time model is key for me, in order to collect all the data source information in one place in order to see immediately what you have to change. The second element is the activation. The main objective is to drive massive traffic to e-commerce. Traffic. It's the same when you have a stores. You have 3 objectives when you open a store. Yeah. It's traffic. And in e-commerce, it's the same. So even for L'Oréal, for the big brands of L'Oréal, we need to maintain everyday awareness and top of mind. So this is key. We still need to be there when consumers arrive in one touch point. So we need to have search and displays and to push traffic on. So this is the first element for activation. The second element is we focus on hero products, meaning pillar products. And I think it's also key to maintain visibility on your hero or iconic products, because at L'Oréal we have a lot of brands, we have a lot of launches every year. So many launches, so many brands. So at the moment, it's key for the consumers to recognize one of these brands and one of these key and iconic products. So we need to push visibility on these hero products. And then when you touch one hero or one iconic, you can push a complementary products. And to activate and drive traffic, we need an always-on calendar. And I like the idea that has been developed in China, which is the festivals calendar, because every day there is a reason to go on your website. So for example, they have free Valentine's Day in China, which is quite a lot if you need to buy something for your Valentine. But the purpose in that is to drive traffic. So driving traffic is key with a reason why to go there. And I think this idea of festival calendar is really something that we can implement in all countries. For example, in France, we have also the Women's Day, Valentine's Day, we have the Green Day. So we can also adapt this objective. The third element I was talking was consumer engagement. So I just mentioned it before, but we need a real-time sellout follow-up, as simply as that. So we need to define the right KPIs in order to adapt the strategy and the communication. So we need a dashboard which is live with also a dashboard with the content for conversion. I think it's really key to see, and we've seen it during the COVID, that the way we talk to consumers has a key impact. And the tone of voice also has to be much more relevant today, and after this crisis will be much more relevant. So this was for the consumer engagement part. And for the last one, which was the organization, I think one of the key priority is that the top to top, what you said, has to be involved. If you don't speak e-commerce first in a meeting, it will never happen. And we've seen it at L'Oréal. At the moment the top to top is involved, it changed everything, because the whole organization is moving in order to target and focus on this priority. So you need to build the capability across the organization in order to adapt your organization to fix and target this objective. And of course, you need to recruit experts. And I think also it's key because I didn't present myself, but I joined L'Oréal 20 years ago, and I've been working on digital for 20 years. And at the beginning of e-commerce, we were doing everything. So only one person doing content, webmastering, integration, etc., media, etc. And now we've seen, and we spend a lot of time at L'Oréal in order to show that it's key to have experts of a key issue. And it's not a project manager of e-commerce that can do everything. So if we want to be better, and if you want to accelerate, we need to have key competencies and adapt the organization towards these objectives.
Thank you,
I want more customers like you.
Thank you.
Very interesting to hear sort of your advice, what you see as the key success factors to drive e-commerce. And I think that actually is very inspirational. And I think what's one of the elements besides, I guess, the sort of the strategy that you described is really what are the platforms and the right sort of tools that would enable that transformation to be sustainable and to be successful. And that leads me to our fourth guest here, Ronit, who is managing e-commerce sales at Salesforce in Israel. Hi, Ronit.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to celebrate the end of the week with you and with this interesting panel. It's a special day because the Israeli market is starting to go live, and it's becoming more relevant than ever, D2C. And I have to ask a question, Elise, because we at Salesforce have a quarterly report for Shopping Index, and we saw at the beginning of the COVID, the latest report ran on Tableau, that the conversion rate and the traffic are significantly increasing. So companies that didn't have a website before are suffering, but those that had a website, the conversion rate is increasing simply because there is no alternative. How did L'Oréal face this conversion rate optimization in this time?
Oh, quite difficult, but it's what we've seen is that, and you're right, there was a decrease of traffic on our D2Cs, but much more conversion, which is quite interesting also. So what we have done is that we establish day-to-day dashboarding in order to follow and adapt the element and the content in order to improve the conversion rate. And that's why we work. We try also to work on the free shipping elements. We try to work on the tutorials directly on the homepage, especially on hair color, because I was mentioning before it was booming product during this crisis. So we establish some day-to-day really task force dedicated to improve this conversion rate. And we focus only on that.
Okay.
But the second element is that I share with all the brands the same information and the same results every day. Meaning that, you know, at L'Oréal, well, so many brands by division. And before everyone was doing working in this division, so we decided to share everything in order to benefit from one example functioning very well from a brand in order to readapt it to another brand. So this is quite new also, this way we worked. But the idea is the dashboard.
Yeah, did you also see, Elise, I know we have client customers that saw an increase of traffic on the desktop because people were a lot at home and a lot watching at the desktop. We heard that as well from some of our customers.
To be honest, we have not seen this.
Okay, that was interesting. Okay.
But you know, we were very present on social networks. Beauty brands are really present on social networks. So the usage, it's much more mobile for us right now.
Maybe, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, Ronit, I'm seeing that the time, since it's such an interesting topic, we're already 35 minutes into the webinar. So I'll move to the sort of questions really related to sort of Salesforce and how would you say, Ronit, the new context and the importance of digital transformation, how is Salesforce positioned and what are the unique features of Salesforce to help drive the transformation? And if you can share a few examples from the rest of the world.
So, like Elise said, you have to be very agile. You have to be very fast and have the capability, the platform, the technology to support a decision of changing your website every day. So if your website today is just focusing on makeup and you understand people are not buying makeup at this time, you need to switch to hair products, you need to give more content. So it's good to have a platform to support that agility. So I'll run some examples. If we go to the first one, I think there's a lot of discussion talking about D2C and what's the value on buying directly from the manufacturer and not from a retailer. So taking Converse, for example, you can buy a pair of shoes in a Foot Locker, in a sports shop, or in a shopping mall. But what makes you go specifically to Converse? So you have to give value. So one of the values we are seeing more and more.
Sorry, Ronit, I'm stopping this. Can everyone
is that people are
I don't.
Ronit, Ronit, sorry.
Have their own statements, and they're looking to be unique.
Okay, Ronit, everybody. Okay, just a question. Can everyone hear Ronit, or am I the only one who cannot hear her?
No.
No.
Same difficulties.
Ronit, we have some issues with your.
Hi.
Your.
Hear you. I can. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Better. No.
Okay, so do I need to repeat the exact same words, or I can make?
Okay, so what I'm suggesting maybe is to move to Yael's question, and maybe we go back to you after Yael. Is that okay, Ronit? Let's move to Yael's question for a second. If we can just go to the page of the questions for Yael, please. Sorry about that to our participants. Everybody's using no, after that, please, and we'll go back to Ronit afterwards. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. We'll just shift a little bit the schedule. So Yael, thanks for being with us today. Can you share with us what types of direct D2C strategies you've seen recently emerging in Israel, in particular in the last few months? And again, what are those that have been more successful, that you think will be, I would say, more successful?
Yes, so so I think that strategy in Israel is not a word that everyone loves, and unfortunately, I didn't see that most of the manufacturers use the strategy of strategy or some kind of forward thinking. Most of them simply set up a platform or use an existing one, but I didn't see that they were thinking about the value that they are giving to their consumer. I think that there's still a job to be done in this category. Companies need to be more organized. I really like the stuff that you were saying about Elise, about L'Oreal, and that you have like a structured frame that what are your initiatives for now on. So I think that the company needs to be more organized and think in longer term manners, not just here and now, not just how much I'm going to sell tomorrow, but more LTV and customer metrics, consumer metrics. I think it's very important, and I think that when a CPG company sets up an e-commerce channel, it has to include a process of mapping and researching and formulating its own strategy. The strategy should be based on the value proposition that sets you apart from your competitors. Not like, okay, I'm going to open a store and everyone will come and buy from me. It doesn't work like that. I think you need to think about three kinds of pillars for strategizing your advantage. So the first one would be the pricing. How will you sell your products? Will it be in low price or will it be premium? So you need to decide. The second pillar is the variety of products. I think you need to decide on, are you going to have like an online-only product strategy for all of the products, or for only a few of the products, or not at all? And the third pillar is the experience and the service. What are you going to offer from a customer experience point of view? What will be your SLA? Elise talked about it earlier. When will you be able to make the shipment? It's crucial. What kind of services will you combine in your products? So I think these are three components that D2C needs to consider. Should also think about the combination between these three, and where do you exactly see your brand, your company, and also take under consideration the costs you are going to have, because a lot of D2C companies don't take under consideration the cost that they will have of managing this online channel. So I think these three are like a guideline for doing a strategy before implementation. I think it's crucial, and I think this what brand CPG, FMCGs needs to do right now. Not just think only about the platform. Okay, how I'm going to be different from my competitors, and what kind of value am I going to give to my consumers?
To what extent, second and last question before we move back to Ronit, Yael, to what extent is DTC today on top of CPG's priorities in Israel? How aware are they and ready are they for that change?
I think they are looking forward to get back to business and repair all the damages that the Corona have done. I think mainly they would like to know what changes in the customer habits will remain here with us after the Corona, and especially what do they need to change in their operations. For your question, how are they addressing the need to change? How are they ready? How much are they ready for embracing the change? I think everyone understands the need to change, and that online is a necessity, as we said in the beginning of this webinar. It's a necessity these days. You need to be available all the time in the channels that your consumers are spending the time in. It's not like something that is nice to have, but I think there is still a gap in understanding of how much budget and investment you need to invest in it. CPGs need to understand that this is not a game anymore. It's not like something let's do a pilot. I think after the Corona life is a whole new kind of different story. Budgets needs to move from media and mass advertising, I think, to giving value for your consumers. So I think it's like a shift in the mindset, and afterwards there will be other shifts, more operational ones.
No, I agree with you. I think that it's not I would say an opportunistic strategy anymore. It has to be part
exactly.
of the
Exactly.
Okay. We don't have. Thank you very much, Yael. We don't have much time left, so Ronit, you have 3-4 minutes. I'm sorry, to present the examples that you wanted to share.
Good luck, everybody.
In examples. Okay, we
So,
were here.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Perfect. So we've done a tour at my house. Welcome in my casa. So I'm guessing it's even better to speak last because I can actually relate to many of the things that you were mentioning before. I took Converse as the first example of the biggest question: why buy direct from the manufacturer and not from the retailer? So if you think about shoes, for example, you can buy it in a sports shop, in a Foot Locker. Why buy Converse from Converse? Well, I think you always have to think when you're going D2C about two things. The first thing would be business continuity. It's not just about selling, it's about giving a continuous conversation with your customer. Your customer wants to have research to learn more about the product, to learn about the values of the company you represent. They can only do it when it's done directly. And of course, the second thing is value. What is the value you're giving your customers from buying directly from you? So Converse, you can actually personalize your own shoe. This is something you can't do on an every shop because you're limited by square footage, you're limited by cost. And here you can go online and choose your shoe, whether it's canvas, leather, suede, tall or short. So both Olivier and Yael can customize their shoe here and go with a totally different statement that represents who they are. So I would say this is the first value of going direct. If you go in the next example I want to share with you, you can see that you can share much more information about the product with your consumer. So Boogaboo here, for example, are taking you for a ride, are kind of giving you an inspirational of what you can do using this stroller, something you might won't get or a totally missed experience if you go on a shop that has 100 types of strollers that you need to make a decision. If you go to the next example I have of an amazing brand working on Salesforce platform is Coke. Coke is very strict on going through retailers and not to sell direct to consumer. But we saw COVID kind of inviting the new consumers to go direct, to speak with Coke, to try new versions, new flavors. For the holiday season, for example, Coke has launched a special edition of Coke flavored with strawberries, raspberries, and kind of flavors that go with the turkey. So you can have a more unique proposition when you're talking direct to your consumer, not via a mitigator that's a reseller that sometimes has different priorities, like their own brands or pricing. If you switch quickly to the next one, I think that's important to pause for a minute and speak about the brand values. When you meet your customers at the floor, at the stores, you don't really have a chance to bring your entire vision, value proposition to your consumers. But when you have a direct channel of communication, you can share your unique values, aspiration, and take Crocs, for example. This is not an expensive brand. This is not a luxurious shoe, but it talks a lot about giving back to the community. So Crocs in COVID took their website and basically said, we're giving back. So we're not expensive, we're super accessible, but we don't forget those that trust us throughout the way. And that's a fantastic example how D2C can use commerce platform to continuously communicate, strength the brand, and not just sell. Crocs, by the way, is also a very good example of personalization. My next slide is talking about more young way. Who could imagine Crocs can be young and sexy? And all of a sudden, by having a direct-to-consumer conversation, you can give the value of rebranding for a specific segment in the population that you want to address differently. I think I'm down to my last slide before I'm losing my breath. So Lululemon, another example of very, very good agility throughout the COVID. So Lululemon basically sells yoga and sports clothing. Again, you can go to any website or any store to buy a tights and a shirt for doing sport. Why go to Lululemon? So doing that direct to consumer with Salesforce Commerce, Lululemon basically said, we get you, we understand. This is not an easy time for anyone. And we want to keep in touch. We don't want to lose our communication with you, dear consumers. And they gave many content, which is a different value for our customers. So they gave a 45-minute class, yoga classes, a more active classes. So basically, they kept speaking the language of their consumers, but doing it in a different way. So they still met them, not in the office, not in the branches, not in the stores, but they continue to invite them to learn and to experience with Lululemon. So they kept the experience, the Lululemon concept, with a direct-to-consumer conversation.
Thank you very much. I think we're done. We're with 5 minutes left. So if we can go back to continue on the next slide. Yes. No. Okay. So Ronit, I think the question on how we can support, this transformation in the current context. So that's a question for me. I'm asking myself my own question. Okay.
I wanted to ask you, because you need to deliver my promises, and that's the difficult job ever. So basically what I'm asking you as a Salesforce partner, how do you go fast? How do you deliver this entire platform in a very rapid way?
So, but what we do is we understand today that there are a number of challenges around going, first, the sense of urgency. Of course, we know that we need to go relatively fast in that context. And secondly, that there is a real need for a long-term partnership with someone that can help companies address every part of digital transformation. And for us, it's more than pure e-commerce. And that's why we really leverage the entire Salesforce platform. And I think that resonates with what Elise was saying earlier. What are the key pillars of success? Know your customer through a retail 360 approach with a real CRM and customer-based approach. Is create real journeys. What are the next steps? How do you communicate and engage with your customer? What sets of digital engagement tool do you put in place? In particular, to talk to your customer on the channel that they want, and of course, what type of e-commerce you need. And all of that is really the strength of the Salesforce platform that we can work on. And if we move to the second page, what we've come up with is really an offer with a package that is time-boxed, really. And we can do that because of the agility also of the Salesforce platform. We came up with a model where within 3 months we can really work on leveraging sort of some of the standards of Salesforce e-commerce to build and improve and leverage all the AI around Salesforce to build your solution. And then over time, improve it and kept adding on new features while creating customer journeys and customer knowledge to make it a success. And we do it via a business model that is, we believe, much more adapted to the current situation. The other thing we do on the next slide resonates to what Olivier was saying earlier in the meeting, which is we do understand the need for retailers today to drive traffic back into the store while offering a nice experience and not having people queuing for a long time in the store and respecting social distancing measures. And what we came up with is a BayRetail Smart Queuing, which is very fast, a few days to implement because we want to create value fast, and allows retailers really to drive traffic by giving the ability for consumers to make appointments online, get immediately a response via SMS or email or whatever channel they pick with a QR code and an assigned time slot, and let the store scan the QR code to make sure that they can control traffic, and let also the store view the number of appointments that they have in a week time to make sure that it's all manageable within their space. So we really try to come up with agile and fast measures built on the Salesforce platform to support on a long-term time, but with creating value immediately to our customers. We can talk about that further, of course, after the webinar. We'll be happy to share with you how we've been implementing that also globally, because one of the things that we do here at BayBridge is work with global companies. We have big clients, Cosmiti in France. We have partners in different spaces, cosmetics, food, etc. And I think that's the new context really needs also new implementation and new solutions, and that's what we're trying to implement. Okay, so I think we've reached the end of our session. I'd like to thank very, very much, a big thank you to all our guests today for their participation. Apologies for some of the Wi-Fi connection we've had, but I think we finished on time, so it's all good and everybody could speak. And we'd be happy, of course, to follow up with you after that and answer potential questions you may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, Yael. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Ronit. Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.